It was all basically posters that showed the U.S. flag since Vietnam War to the present. And I got invited to speak about that show on Life and Times. It no longer exists, but it was a KCET, public broadcasting show that dealt with local LA, Southern California issues. So I went on to speak about the exhibit, and I was in the green room, the room with the food and the wine is, not the wine, food and water is before the thing. And who walks in but Jess Marlowe? Now, this was a flashback because when I was a kid in the late 50s, Jess Marlowe there was only 3 TV stations, or maybe 4. And Jess Marlowe was one of the news broadcasters. And so all of a sudden I just flashed back to seeing him as a kid, and I got all excited. I wasn't even paying attention to, I really didn't know what he was doing since then, but except Life and Times co-host with Val Zavala, who was not in that day. So I said to him, hi, I'm Carol Wells, and are you hosting my segment? And he says, what's your segment about? And I said, political posters, using the flag. And he's looking through his papers, and he says, no, I'm not doing your thing. I'm doing something on patriotism. And my life flashes before me because I realized he was doing my segment, and he didn't have a clue. Nobody prepped him. He didn't have a clue. So the two of us go up there, and that U.S. surpasses all genocide. That was like maybe, and I had, for that show I did have the ecology one. I had the assortment. I had the very gentle ones, and I had the not so gentle ones. And he doesn't know what to say. This was not what he was expecting. And then it comes to the genocide one, and he just says, that's very strong. And I said, you're right. It's one of the strongest posters we have. And you're right. Well, the show went on, and apparently after it was over, he went ballistic. And people said, don't you ever have that woman on the show again. 6-8 months later, we did another exhibit called Solidarity Forever, Graphics of the International Labor Movement. A lot of stuff on Southern California labor history. And we got a call. This is really unusual to get a call from Life and Times. Usually you have to call them and try to get them interested in what you're doing. Somebody told them, this is a great show, you have to have a segment on it. They called up the office, and they said, we want to have somebody speak on this labor show. So I was the curator of the show. I was the researcher of the show. It was basically, I was going to do the program. So my staff said, okay, we'll have Carol Wells call you. And they said, anybody but Carol Wells. She's not, she cannot be on the show. So, and of course there was nobody else to talk about it because, we're a very, very small staff, and there's the person who answers the phone, and there's the person who files stuff, and there was me. It wasn't like we could, and besides, it wasn't even that we would want it to, because it was really a slap in the face. Why give them what they were asking for, really? So that was like the most recent. There's another interesting aspect of censorship that we experience. We get city grants, we get county grants, we get state of California grants, we get private foundation funding. We've never got a federal grant. And the last time we applied for a federal grant, and I was honest with the guy, and I said, we write really good grants, we make it all the way up to the final cut, and we've never gotten, we're talking almost 20 years of writing federal grants. And I said, is it our politics? Of course I cannot tell you, it's against the law for them to discriminate based on the politics. So I said, I know you can't admit it, I know you can't say that, but can you just tell us if it's even worth it? It's a lot of time and money for a small organization to spend these huge federal grants. So this is what he says, please don't quote me. I'm quoting him, but I'm not telling you his name. Or which agency he was with. He said, because it's not just the peer selectings, but it goes all the way up. And the final selection has government officials, like the senators and the congresspeople have really up or down power on these federal grants. So he says, when you're writing your grant, ask yourself this question. If Fox News found out that the federal government was giving you a grant for this project, how would it fly? And I kind of said, you mean Fox News is the litmus test, or whether we get a grant? We could forget it right now. I mean, that's not going to happen. But that's the level of self-censorship now that is happening on the government grant level. They're all terrified of being mocked, dragged through the Fox News slander. And so that, I mean, the ripple, it's not even a ripple effect, it's a tidal wave. Because people don't want to put themselves in a position where they're going to have to justify, they're going to have to excuse or explain why they chose what they chose. So censorship is really, and I think it's way worse since September 11th, because I think people are really terrified. There's a lot of self-censorship that goes on, and a lot, I know artists are dealing with that. You know, if they say what they did before September 11th, you know, they might not get the commission, they might not get that. They might have Homeland Security. Some artists have had Homeland Security knocking on their door. So it's very, very, very different. And I think this is probably a good time for me to stop, and I don't know how you want to do questions, or I'll just stop.
We'll have time for questions and answers, because what I'm going to do now is introduce Daniel, and then we'll all sit and talk. If you're curious now about political posters, well, it's your lucky day. There's a fabulous exhibition up at the University Art Museum, which is attached to the Horn Center. It's Peace Press Graphics, 1967 to 1987, and Carol, you co-organized it with the UAM.
Yes, I co-curated and co-edited it with Eileen Kaplan here.
Hey, okay. So this whole time you've been staring at Daniel Martinez's artwork. He is a Los Angeles-based artist known for his investigation into the future of the species, the nature of democracy and citizenship, cultural memory, power, spatial politics, and theoretical mathematics. His work, which is conceptual, includes text, sculpture, installation, painting, video, and photography, has been exhibited in the United States and internationally since 1978. In 2006, Martinez represented the United States at the Cairo Biennial. He participated both in the groundbreaking 1993 Whitney Biennial, and this is his work from the Biennial, and in 2008, and in the 2008 Whitney Biennial as well as in the 2004 San Juan Triennial, 2005 Lima Biennial, 2007 Moscow Biennial, 2008 California Biennial. He has received 3 National Endowment for the Arts, Individual Artist Fellowship, a Getty Fellowship, and a Paula Krasner Grant. In 2008, he received the United States Artist Fellowship. In 2009, the Rasmussen Foundation Alaska Artist in Residency Award. And in 2010, the Fellows of Contemporary Art Fellowship. He has recently participated in the Houston Photo Fest Biennial and in the Quebec Biennial, a solo exhibition at the Simon Preston Gallery in New York, and has just participated in the Artist Museum exhibition at the MoCA LA and the LACMA Collections exhibition. Martinez is a professor of theory, practice, and mediation of contemporary art at the University of California, Irvine, where he teaches in the Graduate Studies program and the New Genres Department. He's represented by the Simon Preston Gallery in New York, and a monograph of his work entitled A Life of Disobedience has been published in 2009 by the German publisher Hache Kantz. And as we're sitting here and talking about censorship, and I cannot help but think about the Irvine 11, and what is going on with that, because it's from the university where Daniel is teaching. And so, I mean, I'm thinking about this work. Obviously, you've been reading it the whole time. These are tags, the museum entry tags that you get that say, I paid my admission. And so instead of saying the name of the museum on them, they said the sentence that you're reading, I can't imagine ever wanting to be white, which to me very much speaks about the issue of discrimination as a form of censorship. And this is coming at a moment where museums are very adamant about the fact that they are no longer discriminating. It's in 1993. So raising these issues of racial and ethnic discrimination in relationship to the art institution and establishment. Can we go to the next slide? Because people really remember just the sentence, I think it's really important to think about also censorship. Misinterpretation of an artwork can be a form of censorship, and so people got really upset with this artwork. It became infamous, and everybody till this very day, Daniel Martinez, oh, the tags from 1993. So it's important to remember that this was actually, it wasn't exhibited on the wall, but it was, people were it was circulating in the space and people were wearing this. If we could go to the next slide. You can see the artwork as it actually was supposed to be exhibited at the time. And if we can go to the next slide, made the cover of Art Forum and in a way came to stand for the entire 90s. Next slide, please. And this is just fast forwarding to 2006. This is an animatronic sculpture that was, or an animatronic piece that was, it's titled, you guys probably can't see the title, Call Me Ishmael, the fully enlightened earth radiates disaster triumphant. And can we go to the next slide? Seeing it in action in Cairo to sort of give a sense of how it functioned. And I think it's interesting that it was actually vandalized in Cairo. It's bringing up to me the question of censorship in the context of cross-cultural sensitivity. And of course there was the issue that the guy is called Ishmael, and in the original piece he's wearing that belt that says Ishmael, and in the name of cultural sensitivity, exhibiting this in an Arab country, you changed it and you put nobody.
Well, I was asked to change it.
You were asked to change it.
Right, by the U.S. government. So.
Oh, okay.
Question of whether one, we can go back to precisely what Carol had been talking about the whole time.
Yeah.
It wasn't a question of, they don't want that, so
right.
I just ask you to remove it.
And so, yeah, so maybe, and I'm going to turn the table to you guys, unless you want to start talking about that from that perspective, to maybe talk about these questions that you've raised in your talk. I mean, maybe let me ask you this directly as an artist. Like, what do you do when you stand in that position where you've been asked to change something in your artwork? What are the kinds of considerations? Like, when do you stop and say, no, I'm not changing anything? Or where do you make that kind of concession and say, okay, I'm going to change an element in the name of cultural sensitivity?
I think Carol's example about the slides was best, and slides is also such an anomaly at this point, to thinking back to actually utilizing slides as opposed to how we use contemporary digital media now. But perhaps the blank space says more than the actual image does in the context of its absence, right? And so a decision to allow something, a certain type of discourse in public to move forward that circumvents what is a gate that has been put down, or a rule or regulation or some type of reason or rationale that is used by which to suggest that something is either appropriate or inappropriate in the context of the presentation of information in what we still have or refer to as a civil society. And in the context of a civil society, especially in terms of academic environments where we take for granted the idea of freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of thought, it's a bit confusing at this point for me. It's possible that you can. There's a characterization that I've made, and a lot of people disagree with me, but it's very possible that we still intellectually live in the 18th or 19th century in terms of the processes in which we go about thinking about the mechanization of the world and the rules and regulations by which we govern ourselves by, right? The laws, the rules, what keep the society cohesive so that there is not complete anarchy. Nobody wants anarchy,
Right.
but yet no one wants to be told what to do either.
Right.
No, people want a democracy, don't want dictatorship. It gets very complicated. So then you move forward. If you're still thinking intellectually in the 18th and 19th century, your thinking then affects what happens to you in the 20th century. So the example of Reagan is perfect. It's not what we know that is dangerous.
Yeah,
It's what we don't know that is dangerous.
right.